What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 17 of the Build in Public series for Sanctum, the tabletop roleplay game design platform. My name is Casey Baggs. I'm the founder and the creator, and I'm here to talk to you about what we accomplished this week. Massive feature that I'm so stoked about. We're continuing to evolve how system development is, going from this linear, pretty chaotic, unorganized train of thought that is currently the design standard via notes apps or however, sometimes pen and paper, sometimes it's sheets. So whatever. Sanctum creates a natural, organized, modularized structure that takes a concept that is truly complex, designing tabletop roleplay games that inherently have modules built into them, and creates organization and structure in a way that scales by inherently having tools that naturally produce that modularized content. We're going to see that today with templates, and I am so stoked. So let's dive into it. If you're new to Sanctum and what we're doing here, Sanctum is the app for tabletop roleplay game design. This does not exist yet today, so it might be hard to kind of grasp what we're doing, but hopefully this video starts giving you the idea of how we're actually going to make tabletop roleplay game design more accessible and scalable and streamlined in development, just like every other tool that other designers have in the history of all creative platforms, down to video game design, all the way up to photography. Everyone has tools to do what they do. Tabletop roleplay game design doesn't. And just because it's this hardcore DIY aspect, which I love about it, doesn't mean that we have to be not using tools that empower us. That's what Sanctum is solving. And we do it without AI. We're not interested in AI. We're not ever going to use it. And none of our features have it. So we are a human-made platform. So let's dive into it. Okay, so let's talk about what a tabletop roleplay game is in general, because we're talking about this concept of templates today. And so let me go back to the dashboard here. So you can see that I have a few projects in our indie collective organization. We have an open source game. We have Grimm, which is a Mörk Borg hack. That's what we're going to look at on part 2 of this. And we have a private game and an internal game. I can only see the internal game. I'm the creator of it. No one else on my team can see that. So, or the team game, sorry, the admin game is that way. Anything that's private. So, in the concept of a tabletop roleplay game, you have a modularized concepts in general. So let's talk about what that really means, because this is what I mean when I say tabletop roleplay games, designing them is inherently complex, but because we don't have tools to kind of break down these features, unless you're familiar with designing the games, you may not be familiar with how complex it is, or maybe it doesn't seem that complex because you haven't been really taught the juice of tabletop roleplay games. So what I mean by that is the end result of the main thing is normally a singular book, right? It's a core rule book. However, this is a concept of many different things. And what I mean by that is the core rule book is a single module. It uses and relies on a game system, a single module. So now we have 2 different modules contributing to each other for a single outcome. That concept at its base level is probably the one thing that people do totally understand. It's easy to understand that a book has a system. What's not so easy to understand is what is a part of the system and what isn't, unless you're been in the industry for a while. And so, for example, if you're new and aspirational, you may think that this book is the system. but it's not. This book is a theme, the space theme of the Mörk Borg system, and it does add it customizes the Mörk Borg system, so it's really the vast Grimm system that still uses a space theme. The vast Grimm system is not a space themed system. It is a normal game system that's unthemed, and then vast Grimm and all the contents, whether it's an adventure book, a core rulebook, supplement book, that's what adds the space theme to it. And so that's part one. However, modules, in essence, have modules within themselves. And we're going to see that within our system file. So if I go into our open source game, I'm going to create a new branch called, let's call this feature and system, because we're going to create a system file. I'm going to go into that branch and I'm going to create a system file. And we have this already broken up into like what the kind of the modules within a system are, right? We have a resolution, which is all the math and mathematics. We have formulas, rules, and a license is often associated with it. This is all modules within a system, modules that make up a system. Today, let's talk about templates. So, a template is essentially a thing that it's a blueprint that relates to your system, but any other material should be able to use, but make variants of. So to put simply, a template is in essence something that that other content should have many things of. Many different versions of. So a great example of this is that you see a lot, and no matter what the game is often like weapons. A weapon has a template to it, and it's just recreated, right? It's many different things that have a name, a description, a damage, whatever. Items are the same thing. An item is a system template that is created multiple variants of in a core rulebook or a supplement material. Classes, a very big thing. A class is a template that is recreated multiple variants of in whatever the core rulebook is or supplement material, etc. Hopefully you start connecting the dots of what that means. And that's what templates are. And Sanctum provides a way to create templates. So what we're going to do is let's pretend this is a fully custom system. I don't know it doesn't matter. We're just going to create a boring system, and I'm just going to have an item, literally anything that can be used in the game. And I'm going to start adding some columns. So in a way, you can think of your templates as just a tiny little database, because that's really all they really are. So a spreadsheet, kind of like a spreadsheet template. So I'm going to add a new column. It's going to be a name. And let's stop here because we're introducing data types. We're getting a little more lower level to what game design naturally has built into it. We're just making it more accessible and naturally through our UI educational at the same time. So we have certain data types. This is a little lower level, but it's important that all designers understand what these mean. So we have text. That's obviously what it is, text. Integer is super nerdy type of a number. And then float is obviously it's a point number. But you can see we add icons here to show the different types of data types. So for example, Boolean is probably the most abstract. That's pretty much a true false statement. So you can see we add a switch here to hopefully connect the dots of like on off. So we're going to do a text because we know a name is text. We're going to add a description. That's also going to be a text. And an item maybe has a cost to it. So let's make that an integer. Okay. What do you know? We have a template now. This appears like nothing magical. We can see that we own it. the name and the description, we can see the columns and their values. And likewise, we have the editable actions. This is based on ownership. Now, this is going to get a lot more interesting now that we have a template. Let's create another one. Let's create a weapon template. So anything that can be used in combat. So a weapon, I'm just going to kind of go Mörk Borgy here, because Mörk Borg rules. But let's do name, description, cost. And let's do damage is also going to be an integer. Okay, notice we have this new section here. Now that we have a template, we have a relationships section. I'm going to ignore that for now, and let's create our weapons template, or our weapon template. And now we have two templates. We're starting to build our system out to where other materials that we want to use can make variants of. You could think of this as essentially you're creating a factory here for other people to use. Now let's get interesting. Now let's create a class template, and this is like a pre-made character roll-up or whatever. However you want to call that. It doesn't matter. It's just a demo. We're going to call it text. Of course, a description. Whoa, I can't type so early in the morning. Now let's get interesting. We're going to add a column called starting weapon. And you can name these however you want. Typically, I would recommend underscores in all lowercase. We call this snake case. Yeah, snake case. Haven't had to remember that syntax name in a while. It doesn't matter what this type is. I'm going to make it text because it really doesn't matter. And then starting equipment. Once again, doesn't matter because what we're going to do is we're going to add relationships. And so because this is such more of an abstract idea, because what we're doing is we're creating a natural way to connect all of these modules together in a way that really hasn't been done, but does do, as odd as that sounds, like in this is what I mean by designing tabletop roleplay games is complex, but we've been fooled and lied to in that because there hasn't been a tool that, oh, it's so simple. But then once your game starts scaling, like Grimm has so many books on it, but they're all disconnected right now because there's no tool like Sanctum, which is why I'm super stoked that Brian was one of the first early adopters to join our pool because he sees the vision of this. And so what I'm going to do is we try to add as much detail as possible. A relationship is essentially a template that is assigned to a value of another template, which creates that natural tree of information, the kind of the data flow, if you will. This will really come into play once we build out the supplement file and the core rulebook file, where you're going to have your factories, where essentially you'll be able to streamline creating these variants. And if you're someone that creates supplemental material all the time, like Gnome Wacky or Christian from the Mörk Borg community, I mean, you're going to love these features. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say starting weapon is going to be, it's going to reference the weapons template. I'm going to create that. You see that we have a relationship here. And I'm going to create another one, starting equipment, same thing. It's going to reference the item template. Now we know we have this new template. That's a class. It has some columns and we have some relationships. We're going to add a relationship to the weapon template, where a starting weapon is going to point to the weapon template. Trying to make that as intuitive possible. If that is still kind of abstract from a designer perspective, please let me know, because that's the whole point of these videos, is to make this as easy to understand and use as possible before we release publicly. So let's create that and check out the difference. Now we have these little links to show that these columns are connected to others. Now, we're still showing the raw value. I'm going to change this in the future to make sure it points to the template so that way it's more intuitive. Don't worry about that. But now you can kind of see what templates are all about. This is a custom system. And then if we wanted to remove anything, we could. But this is just a starting point. Now let's get more interesting. I'm going to go back to the dashboard. Let's go into the Grimm horde. We talked about Vast Grimm. We can see in our project, Brian has already created a Spark file. His ideas. Let's create, we're not even going to worry about a branch. Let's just create a system file. What does Brian call this? The horde system? I think so. Forgive me, Brian, if that's incorrect. But essentially, it's a Mörk Borg hack. So let's go to extensions. We're going to go to the Borg engine. We're going to add that. And just to validate, we have the Mörk Borg license. We have the resolution, so uses the D20 set rollover method. And we've inherited the very few templates that I've created for the Mörk Borg engine. We can see that they come from the Mörk Borg engine because they're all inherited. And because of that, just like with anything else, we have custom options. So we can override these values or we can remove them, whatever, just like anything else. And just to be clear, if we overrode this and it was a mistake, because it's inherited, you can just revert it to the original state, no problem. So Vast Grimm has this concept called worms. So let's create two tables just to drive this home. We have this Mörk Borg hack. I'm going to create a template called effects. Anything that can be a pain or pleasure from a worm. Cool. And looks like it's just a text. Has a description. Oops, can't spell that. Who cares? You guys know what I mean. And an effect, I believe. So an effect, I'm going to put text to. Once we get to variables, this list is going to update to also include your variables that you have defined. So an effect, in theory, probably is like a formula that would connect to it. I'm not sure. We'll figure that out once we get to variables. There are no relationships here. So we're going to create that. And we now see that very easily. We have some inherited stuff. We have our own stuff. Let me know if you're a designer. We're intentionally doing slightly different layouts. We kind of just want to see how you favor what. For example, resolution, we have them all blended together. For the dice licenses, we have them organized. So we have a yours section versus inherited. There's no yours yet. I need to add a placeholder here to make it more obvious. And then templates kind of does the same thing with a slightly different table. These are intentional because we want to, before we launch, ideally, we want to have the same type of layout design for all of these. Just kind of let me know. This is the 3 different variants we're going to provide to see who likes what more. Okay, so let's create the last one. We're going to do the word. You know, we don't have to add description. Forget that description. It's going to be a name. You know where I'm going with this. Because you understand the concept. You get it. And effect. Or, sorry, this should be pain. It doesn't matter, because we're going to create a relationship. And pleasure. Doesn't matter. Create a relationship. Okay, so now I want to show that just because you have unique columns doesn't mean you can't point to the same thing. So we have a pane that's going to be an effect. We see that relationship, pane effects. And now we're going to create a new relationship of pleasure is also going to point to an effect. Cool. There we go. Bada bing, bada boom. Now we have our worms, and now we can publish the system. And then everyone who wants to make vast Grimm material can make vast Grimm material, inherit all of this in a modular way. Brian makes an update. You're going to get a notice in whatever file you're working in that that system has been updated. Do you want to resync everything? You can choose to stay on the old version or update to the new version. And it will tell you if there's breaking changes and stuff. So that's it. This is a massive, like, can we just stop? I know this video is longer now, but can we just stop to acknowledge, like, how big of a deal this is? Like, it just looks like we're creating, like, a very organized way to build a system. But imagine working in another file. So, working in a core rulebook file or a supplement file, you're going to have factories now that use these templates. And what I mean is you're going to be able to churn these templates out much faster. And now that they connect and they have relationships, it's not going to be guessing what goes where, but you're going to have strict typing. So whenever we have those factories, if you have a table that relates to another table, you're going to get that table's options to be able to choose from in that template to be able to line out that value. Like, this is mind-blowingly insane how much this is going to empower and streamline development in a way that we've just never witnessed before as designers in this industry, and I'm just so stoked about it. And so hopefully you can start to see the power and the vision of taking this idea that is inherently complex and module-based and providing essentially a platform and a framework that does that and creates more organization. So this can scale in a way that will streamline game development and make your project here the single source of truth. So that way that whenever you're ready to send it to print to the layout designer, everyone has this space that they can work in. Other designers have this communal product now that they can bridge off of everything else. I mean, it only gets better from here. We're talking job boards. We're talking like following other designers. Like, there's a social layer we haven't even touched yet with this part. And I'm just so excited for all of this. So that's it for this week. This is massive, massive feature. Thank you so much for following the project. Please like, subscribe. It helps us out a lot. And next week, not next week, but in the future, we're going to start working on traits and variables, which will directly connect to templates as new values. And we're almost down. I mean, we're on the downhill slope here. So hopefully we'll have this towards the end of the year ready for people to start testing out. The early adopters will be first to get that private pool, and then we'll release publicly. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you. And peace.